Welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, the podcast for the leaders and entrepreneurs of today.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul, I see you. All right, John, finish. Coach Carl.
Good job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Carl here, and welcome to episode 318 of the Today's Leader podcast, the podcast for the leaders and the entrepreneurs of today. What an amazing episode we have for you today. Now, I had the absolute pleasure to speak with Erin Jewell from Erin Jewell Consulting. Now, our conversation went through so many topics and in so many areas where Erin has specialty. Now, we spoke about empowerment. We spoke about team productivity. We spoke about the continuing development of female leaders. We spoke about the essentials in relation to leaders' performance, in relation to embracing mindfulness and wellness. There were so many topics. In fact, I found it really difficult to pinpoint the title for the podcast. It was an amazing conversation, and I know it's one that you are going to truly enjoy. So let's tell you a little bit about Erin Jewell, our global expert today. Erin is an executive mindset and growth coach. She's also a fellow podcaster of the Erin Jewell Show, Redefining Success. She works with executives to make the most out of their teams and create a culture of empowerment. Now, she climbed up the career ladder in the medical device sector at Medtronic and was ultimately responsible for $80 million in revenue as the director of sales. Now, Erin is an executive mindset and growth coach. She's an international speaker and she's the professor of leadership at Villanova University. Now, Erin was raised with the belief in the possibility that she could do anything. And after listening to this episode, I believe that you'll be feeling something very similar. After a word from our sponsor, please welcome Erin Jewell.
The podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, Erin Jewell. How are you, Erin?
I'm doing well, Coach Carl. Great to see you.
Tell us a little bit about the Erin Jewell story.
Well, for all intents and purposes of our time together today, I will share that I am a Philadelphia native, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, here in the United States, which is where I currently reside. I did live in Spain for a little while as a child, and I also have lived in California and Miami. Other than that, I've always resided in the United States. However, my earlier professional career took me to the international markets, Latin America. I worked in the pharmaceutical and medical device sector as a sales leader, business leader, marketing director, and eventually in 2015 left the traditional workforce to co-found a healthcare startup which built online health empowerment solutions. It was a service solution company. We had 26 hours of curriculum that we sold to physicians and leaders in the corporate sector. That ran its course, and about 3.5 years later, we ran out of money. We're not scalable. IT was not a core competency, so we closed the doors on that. And it was very timely because I realized how much I just wanted to keep my focus on consulting, facilitation, speaking, and coaching. So since then, I've been building my coaching and consulting practice. I'm currently an executive coach. I focus on mindset and growth and work primarily with leaders in the healthcare sector. I am a newlywed. I've been married for just under a year, so I waited a little longer to get married, and I am the proud bonus mom, as we like to say here in the U.S., of 3 magical little humans, and I am grateful to be here today. Yeah.
I've watched some of your videos and seen some of your content. You've got a wide range of specialty, what I would call specialties that you can sort of support people with, and totally envious around the Clive Global the Thrive Global recognition, where you were ranked alongside Tony Robbins as one of the top 10 in your field. So well done on that. That's just a little bit of coach envy coming from this side of the world. Now, Erin, you've got the focus around helping business leaders develop empowered teams. So just give me a little bit of an insight as to what that actually means, because empowerment still gets thrown around around the business world that we need people to be empowered. But how do you help business leaders actually develop empowered teams?
It's such a great question. And honestly, I agree with you. It is one of these words that is being thrown around, which I think is a good thing, by the way. It kind of reminds me of when yoga was brought to the United States, and it became very popular because everybody wanted to buy the cool yoga pants. But really the practice of yoga is a very deep philosophical practice. So the positive benefits were being had, even though people didn't really see the power of it, and they just wanted the cool yoga pants, right? The same thing with empowerment, words like empowerment, mindfulness, even authenticity. But when it comes to empowerment, in order for a leader to truly be able to empower the team, my research and observations have brought me to a place where I'm recognizing that only becomes possible when the leader themselves feels empowered. And in order for the leader themselves to feel empowered, it takes a level of self-observation and self-awareness that drives them to perform better as a leader.
So what are the benefits of empowerment?
Another really good question, especially because empowerment requires a level of consistency. Empowerment is a practice. Empowerment is a discipline. It's not something that we just kind of wake up one morning and we know how to feel empowered and empower. The benefits, so in order to really keep that practice going, to your point, understanding the benefits is huge. The benefits of empowerment, when you have a team that feels empowered, you're going to experience off the bat greater productivity. This increased productivity is usually born out of increased innovation, enhanced creativity on the team. When all of the members of the team are feeling empowered to share their ideas and their thoughts, when they feel like it's a safe place to do that, it's going to move the needle more. There's going to be more progress and more productivity. So that's one of the major benefits, I would say, off the bat of empowerment.
It's interesting. I worked for an organization here that was very much focused around empowering leaders, empowering teams. And in fact, we used to talk about the sidelines, and it was Bunnings Warehouse here in Australia, and which is a model around like the Home Depot from the States. And we were told that predominantly the warehouse was our playing field. The guidelines are like way out. And whatever you do inside, it's your good judgment that we're expecting. It's good leadership judgment. But I still remember one time we'd recruited an older plumber, a plumber who was a qualified plumber. He'd come into the organisation. He'd done the 3-day induction. He was... being an older style gentleman, he was probably a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit overawed, and I've caught up with him on his first day in the shop. And I was just having a chat with him, and honestly, Erin, he looked terrified because he was saying all the right words. Oh, Tony, I'm really looking forward. I'm empowered to make decisions and whatnot. And I just shuddered because A, he looked terrified, but B, I've got a guy that's 3 days into his into the organisation, and the number one thing he's got out of 3 days induction is that he's going to be making his own decisions. So, needless to say, I sort of challenged our leadership group at that particular time that we needed to make that better. So, are there some pitfalls in and around empowerment?
It's such a great point, and again, I would say that probably that's a really good example of how empowerment isn't really meant to be imposed. Okay. One of the key considerations for the successful development of any team is that rapport building and that trust building process. When we talk about, the 5 stages of the development of the team, right? You have norming, storming, forming, performing, and adjourning, right? So in that norming and storming phase, where people are trying to figure out their strengths, their contributions, their roles, also get to know each other, that's really when you have the opportunity to build rapport and trust and know how to tailor the conversations about empowerment in a way that suit the needs of the team.
So is it about providing, so obviously there's a skill set that's required, there's a framework that's desired, and there's also that trust component would be absolutely huge because, we were, and as I said, we were told to act in our own best judgment, which is okay when you've got good judgment. But if you don't have good judgment, if you don't have that level of advancement, empowerment can actually, I'm imagining, can be quite an unhealthy situation.
Absolutely. I mean, when the trust isn't there and the individual doesn't feel like they can operate in a safe space, because let's be honest, people are hired into roles because of their abilities generally, right?
Yeah.
There are situations out there where, internal hires are made because there's a personal connection, but generally speaking, people are being hired into roles because they've demonstrated some kind of ability to perform or even excel in that area, right? So when somebody's feeling intimidated by this idea of having so much autonomy right off the bat, there is a balance. To your point, there's a necessary dance that really has to take place that is oftentimes overlooked because of what you just said. Building trust and building rapport is its own skill set. And I don't know if I'm misinterpreting what you said, but what I just understood you to say, building trust and rapport is a skill set. And if I could just segue a little bit here, this is a lot of what I talk about as an executive coach. We have a lot of leaders, and some of this is cultural, okay? I can't speak for every market around the globe. In the US, it's a very individualistic, still very much a patriarchal, although shifting society. And as a result, we have a major focus on certain leadership characteristics that might otherwise be defined as more masculine. Now, we are stepping away from the gender identification, so sometimes I'll say yin and yang. So we have that yang, that initiator, activator, provider, and then we have the yin. And on the yin side, we have more of that holistic listening, that trust building sense of community, key leadership characteristics to critical processes in any team's development.
And that just makes so much sense, and absolutely 100% agree with you. So many people, I guess, discount those, what many people call soft skills, but in fact they're probably the hardest skills. And I have many leaders who talk to me and come to me and say, Tony, I want to learn how to build trust. And usually the first stage that I talk to is, okay, are you trustworthy? And they get taken back by that because, to me, I think that's the foundation. You can't expect to build trust within a team for people to trust you if, in fact, you've got a hidden agenda or you've got agendas or you aren't trustworthy or you're not going to be true to your word or any of those things. I mean, it just defies logic to believe that some leaders can do that. Those soft skills are incredibly important for people, that ability to build rapport and build trust. And it was interesting, Erin, just this week I spoke with another leader on the podcast, and she was talking about, actually it's this very week, the episode that was published this very week, Deborah Peters was talking about there's not a great deal of difference between men and female in business. But fundamentally, I see that there's a well-rounded skill set that we can create really good leaders by actually, that concept of yin and yang may be the one that resonates with a lot of leaders. But there is a real mix of leadership skills that we can take from, I suppose, both genders, that it can really make well-balanced, well-rounded leaders.
Absolutely. And, a lot of the clients that I work with, and I agree with the statement that there's a lot more of a similarity than a difference between male and female business professionals. I do agree with that statement. What I run into a lot with my coaching, I run into a lot of individuals who are overdeveloped with certain leadership characteristics and underdeveloped with other leadership characteristics. which tend to be, as you called attention to, kind of more of these soft skills. I joke and I say the person that named those characteristics soft skills was someone who realized how hard they are to cultivate and didn't want anybody else to go near them in the business world. So they labeled them soft skills so everybody would think they were a waste. But truly, this is where the work is really done. And these qualities, especially in the more sort of parental, kind of patriarchal environments, this idea of building a sense of community, building a sense of trust, valuing trust, have over the years in the more quote unquote developed markets of the world have kind of fallen to the wayside, at least, for certain in the US, right? So, like I said, a lot of the work that I do with clients is that balancing and that integration and finding that dance, because you know what happens, and it happens more in my ecosystem. I've noticed this more with female leaders than I have with male, is sometimes that glass ceiling is self-imposed, because what happens is the female leader over time learns to emulate certain leadership characteristics that are stereotypically defined as more masculine, and reaches a limit in her ability to obtain promotions, because there are all these other characteristics that make her even more powerful as a leader that she's kind of ignored over the years. So, and I do my best to stay away from masculine and feminine as much as I can, but in order to move forward, we kind of have to acknowledge where we are. And we have a lot of women that grew up in these masculine, sort of more patriarchal containers where they learned how to initiate, activate, a lot of extroversion, which are all execution, right? That fixed mindset, that mindset of execution, which is huge. The other side of that is the learner mindset. And that's where a lot of these other characteristics play.
It's a challenging world of leadership. And, in the area that I'm in, with construction, manufacturing, and they're predominantly being male-dominated worlds. And there's a real drive at the moment within our Chamber of Commerce to really start to develop the leaders, the female leaders, and create avenues for female leadership to thrive and prosper. Now, one of the challenges that particular initiative is facing is that a lot of the female leaders are comfortable being guided by other female leaders. And they're almost, in some respects, really nonplussed about having male leadership role models or male leadership mentors within those particular programs. Is there, in your experience, how have you seen that female leadership can prosper? What sort of a balance are we looking for there?
It's very interesting that you said that. So, I recently was interviewed on NBC 10. It's a TV station here in the States, and we talked about this topic of bullying in the workplace, and it's so subtle, but interestingly enough, in the United States, the majority of the time when bullying's happening, when it's happening with women, it's women bullying other women. So I'm going to share with you why I'm bringing this up. So studies are showing that women want to see women promoted. Studies are showing that now more than ever, women are wanting to see other women in promoted leadership roles. However, it's also showing that women still ultimately find it, and there's a bunch of criteria involved, easier to work for men. So the solution in all of this, and there's many, however, the work I do with female leaders is, talking about, encouraging more awareness on how women can effectively work with each other. You got to think about this. Keep something in mind. Women have not had even the opportunity to work with each other. Listen, when I was in sales, I was in medical device sales. All of my clients were male physicians. I could count on one hand the number of female surgeons I called on. I was on a team of 12 men at one point. I had very little opportunity to interact with women over the years. So by the time that became an opportunity for me, I was like, how do I do this? How do I work with women? I don't even know how to work with women. And I was leading a bunch of them. I was all of a sudden leading all of these women. And there was retaliation. Listen, it's in our DNA as women to compete for resources.
Yeah.
It's outdated. It's unnecessary. We don't need that anymore. We're entering a chapter of collaboration. But it really, and this is just my experience and my observation, it starts with this. Women not feeling like they have to support each other, but women feeling like they get to. And if you're a woman and you currently don't feel, if you feel like you have to support other women just because you're a woman, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. And however, if you do feel that way, I invite you to consider why that's happening and what you might do to shift that for yourself and find yourself in a place where you get to support women. So as all of these women are being promoted, because in the U.S., let me tell you, it is changing very rapidly. These single percentile numbers of women in leadership is there are a lot more women in leadership today than there ever have been. And all of a sudden, women are kind of having to figure it out, right? Yeah. So it really does start with getting used to it and being open about the fact, like saying, hey, I'm not used to working with women, but I want to figure this out. I want to know how to do that.
Some really good insight, and especially for the personal situation that we have out here. And funnily enough, the leaders, we have a large array of really good senior leadership. Our mayor of our city is female. The presidents, the last two presidents of the Chamber of Commerce have been female. It's just, we've really got some fantastic, strong leaders that just happen to be female in those areas, and I love that concept of removing that compliance, that need to support each other, and actually look to that willingness to lead and support each other. I think that's a really key, critical point. I might have to, my conversation today was all about productivity with teams, and this is what I love about the podcast, especially with people like yourself, because we can go off on any particular tangent, but I'm going to come back into productivity with teams, and we'll talk empowerment. So is empowerment one of those key ways? So I know that you talk about the 5 ways to increase productivity within teams, and I think that's a really cool way to talk to leaders about that. But is that part of the empowerment process, or is there other things that we need to be looking at to build and increase productivity within our teams?
The word empowerment is all about sustainability. In order for empowerment to truly exist with a leader and a team, it is something that is long-term. It is not a short-term process. It's kind of like the words inspiration and motivation. And again, these are all just possibilities. It either resonates or it doesn't. But the word, you can motivate somebody to do a good job on a project, or, come to sports practice on any given day. But in order to really inspire somebody so that they start making those healthy choices on their own, other things need to happen. The same is true for empowerment. When somebody feels empowered, they're not feeling empowered on a Thursday to do something. They're feeling empowered about the work that they do each and every day when they wake up. So you get to be a little more hands-off. So one of the ways, and there's so many ways to do this, but one of the ways that has been proven to be very effective is actually based on a very old concept, and it's a concept called Ikigai. So it's Ikigai, Ikigai. This is an ancient Japanese psychological process, and if you Google it, Ikigai, you'll find some really interesting flow models. It was created in 794 AD, which I actually find to be kind of hilarious, because literally we were pondering the same thing thousands of years ago that we are today. So I'm not sure what that says for humanity. However, the concept itself is about bringing the spiritual and the practical together. So what does that have to do with empowerment? The following: bringing passion and purpose together equals empowerment. I am feeling empowered when what I am passionate about and I excel in is being utilized and is meeting the needs of my organization, if it's serving a purpose. So it's getting to that place where my strengths, what I enjoy doing, what I excel in is basically something that my company will pay for. And when that's happening, and that's a flow state, that's really where the empowerment is happening.
And then the corresponding benefit is then on increased productivity and performance.
100%. You're going to have more creativity, more innovation. You're going to have a likelihood to move that needle more. You're not going to have employees who are just checking boxes. You're going to have employees who are showing up more powerfully than you could have ever asked them to, taking initiative in ways you didn't even think were possible, and acting as a cohesive unit. When we feel like our strengths are being tapped into, when we have a role, think of a sports team, think of like a little league sports team, everybody, a baseball team or rugby, whatever. When everybody has their position to play, everybody knows their contribution on that team and they play their role and they play it well. And they know that they act as that cohesive unit. That possibility exists in the workplace as well. And it happens when we are connecting our passion with purpose. And the leader's responsibility is to help the employee do that.
Role clarity is just absolutely critical, and I'm amazed that you actually used the word rugby. So well done for an Australian leader. I'm impressed. So well done.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's
not as well known, obviously, in the States as what it is over here in Australia. But anyway, I was impressed. So with your own personal leadership journey, Erin, who's been the inspiration behind that?
Well, I think for better or for worse, perhaps many people, and I recognize the question is for me, but our primary influences are mom and dad. If we're blessed to be able to have that experience, whether it's biological or adopted, so for me, that is my story. My primary influences are mom and dad, biological mom and dad, who from a very young age made things possible for me. I was taken out of my comfort zone as a child by being sent off to Spain to learn the language and culture at the age of 11, not knowing the language. It was very uncommon for somebody in my area, in the U.S. to even care about learning another language back in the early 90s. And, I developed a lot of confidence, and also I developed this understanding of other cultures at a very young age because I had to learn how to survive. And so it had a massive influence on my leadership journey.
That's a great story. Huge discomfort there. And, Spain, one of the trips that my wife and I did prior to COVID shutting the world down was to Japan. And it was truly the very first time that I'd ever been in a country where English was very much the second language. And that created a level of uncertainty going into the country and doing our holiday and trying to get our way around. But I think back so fondly with that and how we managed to pick up a few words here and there, how we utilised Google Translate much more often than what I thought we would. But how accommodating the people of Japan were and how much they were able to communicate, even if English wasn't incredibly strong with them. So I can certainly attest to that level of discomfort of being in. Mind you, I've been to the States, and sometimes Spanish gets spoken quite. It seems almost in some parts of the States that Spanish is the first language that's being spoken anyway because of the multicultural mix. So, in relation to leaders, so the podcast is called Today's Leaders. So when we think about the traits that a great leader should have, so what are some of the traits or the characteristics or skill sets that you see that great leaders should have?
That's such a great question. And I just love the name of this podcast for that reason, because it has shifted, and here, again, a lot of my work as a coach is in the U.S., although I do have some international clients. And, that being said, there's a big shift toward this idea of mindful leadership. And, there's a statistic that 9 out of 10 companies right now in the U.S. are pursuing opportunities to improve the wellness and well-being of their employees. Obviously the pandemic has a lot to do with that. So, today's leader is a more mindful leader. Today's leader is filling all of the buckets, but not trying to fill all of the buckets, so to speak. So not trying to outperform in every area. Today's leader is consciously making choices about their time, being mindful about their time, not just allowing the schedule to sort of take over each day. And I'm not saying this
Yeah.
is happening the majority of the time, right? There's a movement in this direction. And, today's leader has a desire and has access for more. I don't know if this has made its way to Australia or not, but there is I don't really know the appropriate way of naming this, but they're calling it the Great Resignation. There are a lot of individuals who are quitting their jobs in the U.S. after the pandemic, and there's a lot of conversations about why this is happening. And one theory is because people are really waking up and recognizing that they have access to more than, they have access to more paid time off. They have access to more, resources, and that companies are in a position to do more. And so I just think this is a really great opportunity for the leader to step in and to take better care of themselves, set healthier boundaries, empowering others to do the same.
Some of the conversations that I've seen that you've had with others has been about that world of balance. And while we're starting to really push the time envelope now for this conversation, I'd love to get you back on to talk about that balance and that shift to a much more mindful, healthier style of leader, because there is a strong alignment to personal health for leaders, isn't it?
It's absolutely a holistic approach, and there's no question that the leaders who are prioritizing well-being as much as they're prioritizing things like financial well-being and the needs of the organization, the timelines and the strategic imperatives, hands down, these leaders are the most effective.
So with the journey that you've undertaken, how would you describe your relationship with failure?
I teach that's great. I teach a strategic organizational leadership course, and I have this at a local university, and I have this welcome letter that I send out each time, and it says a leader, and I have to rack my brain a minute here, but it says something like a leader. The level of success that a leader experiences is based on the failures they've had. Consider me a very wise leader, right? Listen, I had somebody say to me last week I was talking with, she said, you clearly have experienced an entrepreneurial failure, even the company before this one. So I have I would like to think I have a pretty healthy connection and a pretty healthy relationship with failure. I've learned to identify the gifts and the opportunities for me to honestly just be a better human as a result of the mistakes and the failures happening along the way. And the way I see it, my life is one big evolving model. And so I require a constant recalibration that is not going to happen if everything is just going swimmingly.
In fact, when things are seemingly going swimmingly, that's when we get ensconced in this thing called the comfort zone, and we think it's never going to change, and then all of a sudden some circumstances outside of our control normally force the change upon us. So I haven't met a leader yet that's just skyrocketed their way to the top without some hiccups or some downfalls or falling flat on their face. It tends to happen, and we've got to learn from that. So leaders are readers. Erin, what's the book that's had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, gosh. I love that. Well, oh, my goodness gracious. There are so many. I'm looking over right now at my bookcase. I have many. I have multiple. There's actually, this is interesting. Okay, so the one that just came to mind, I'll share. It's called Wild at Heart, and it's by a man named John Eldredge. And interestingly enough, this book was written primarily for men, about the journey of a man and the trials and tribulations that, those who identify as male walk through. And the reason I read this book when I did was because so much of my life, so many of my role models and leaders were men, and I had really learned to emulate them, and I felt a very strong connection, and I wanted to understand their journey more because my journey is a little different, and I also had some trauma in the workplace with men along the way. So reading this book really helped me to understand some of the challenges that internally that men can walk through, some very specific challenges that really disarmed me and gave me more compassion for men. And every man that I've recommended that book to, and woman, actually, I've recommended that book to many men and women, have absolutely loved it. And every man has come back to me and said, this is my story. And the women have come back and said, thank you. It's given me a lot more compassion for men. So it's not a direct business book. However, I think is really good for self-awareness and just understanding the human element. And by the way, there is a sort of female version of that book. John's wife wrote the book called Captivating, just a gorgeous book as well. And it's focusing on the journey of the woman.
I'll make sure I've got those two books sitting in our show notes on the Today's Leader website. So Wild at Heart and Captivating. So Erin, what's the vision for you moving forward?
You know, the three things I value are self-actualization, human empowerment, and unity. So my goal and my desire is to, on a daily basis, be feeding the things that I value and to continue to carve out any activities, any thoughts, any processes that are not directly feeding the self-actualization, human empowerment, and unity. I believe that the self-actualization, the further we can get in this lifetime, the more we can show up as the best version of ourselves, the more full life experience we're going to have. So my desire is to continue to show up and honor the things that I value, and hopefully as a result have a positive impact on as many people as possible.
Out of everything that you've accomplished, what's the one thing that you're most proud of?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and the first thing that comes to mind is being the bonus mama. I am a proud bonus mom of a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and 7-year-old, and that's probably the first time I've ever said that out loud. That if that in fact is my proudest accomplishment to date, that is pretty incredible, because I've done some cool things in life, but apparently that's at the top of the list. So there you go. That's
the thing that's sitting in there, and you know, and the thing that I take from that is there's so many I suppose options available to people in the world, and to actually embrace that as an opportunity and an accomplishment, whereas maybe not everyone would have embraced that concept. Maybe that was going to be the deal breaker. However, some people look at it, some people would have run from that. So I think that that's an absolutely relevant accomplishment. And once again, it sort of gives us a real clear indication of Erin, the person, as well as Erin, the executive coach and leader. So Erin, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Not at all. This has been a lot of fun. I'm so grateful, Tony, that we've had this time together. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. How can people connect with you? Because you're also a podcast host. So let's talk about how people can connect with you, Erin.
Sure. So the quickest way to find out about me and the resources that I offer, I actually have free guided meditations on my website for anyone to access. There are positive affirmation meditations for the high performing professionals, so you don't have to sit quietly to listen to them. You can be on the go. And my website for that is www.erinjewellconsulting.com. So that's ERINJEWELL consulting.com. And you can also book a one-on-one consultation if you have any questions about what you've heard today, or you would like to go through some goals that you have, or just have a conversation about a transition that you find yourself in. Feel free to make time with me. It is a free consultation. I also have blogs. I write about soft skills not being so soft and all sorts of other fun topics, some of which we've covered today. And yeah, so that's the best place to go.
Excellent. Erin, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for investing in the leaders of today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your work.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
And now, it's time for Tony's 2 cents.
During my conversation with Erin, I found so many things compelling. Now, Erin is a great model for what leadership looks like in my mind, and she was a perfect guest for the podcast, and I believe and I hope that you've taken great value from what it is that she spoke to. Today's Leader podcast has a quest to improve the leaders of today and an overall quest for better leadership. Now, the conversation around the development of female leaders was absolutely relevant to me and incredibly pertinent. Now, I especially love when Erin spoke to the need to move away from the feeling of obligation that some feel when developing leaders, and moving, especially in the female leadership development space, moving to the mindset of wanting to support leaders. Now, the quest for better leadership is about better leaders overall. But when it comes to the development of the female leader, I'm always reminded of a quote from Richard Dawkins. Now, this quote is related to the betterment of the world. So it's also, obviously, it's absolutely incredibly relevant to the development of female leaders. Now, Dawkins said, all men should be feminists. If men care about women's rights, the world will be a better place. We are better off when women are empowered. It leads to a better society. And obviously, the same is absolutely true for organizations and businesses. When we empower and develop our female leaders, our organizations and our businesses will be in a much better place. Now, as leaders, we all have an obligation to develop others. We want great leadership, and ultimately, we will continue to see females fill leadership roles, senior roles, influential roles. We want great leaders. And while there are some commonalities around traits of today's leaders, everyone will have their own unique skill set. But the question I want to pose, and this is a question not just for female leaders, but it's also a question for male leaders. We all need to have a mix of mentors in the leadership space. We all need a blend of leadership role models. And I believe that we all need to learn from the full gamut of leaders that are out there. So don't confine yourself to leaders of the same type, the ones that you feel comfortable with, the ones that you connect with, the ones that follow the same, went to the same high school you did, or the university alumni that you have. Don't confine yourself to leaders of the same type, the same style, and the same gender. Learn from every leader that you come in with, because the quest is to develop better leaders, full stop. So let's really get out there, support the great leaders that we have, and let's work together to develop better leaders. And that's my 2 cents. Now is the time, of course, for you to take control of your leadership growth in this disruptive world we navigate. Our aim is to help you become the best leader you need to be today by providing you access to global leaders and experts. Now, if you're looking to build better leadership skills, check out the Today's Leader website at todaysleader.com.au. Today's Leader is a collective mindset, being the best leader today, forging greater success tomorrow. We have the mindset to make a difference, the ability to create an impact. Think and Grow Business hopes our Today's Leader masterminds. Think and Grow Business, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Book your free 30-minute discovery call right from the homepage at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. You are standing stronger, braver, and no doubt wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. You know what it is. Don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.